Today on Locked On Rockies, Paul DePodesta has his first press conference in Denver, highlighting his plans for the Rockies. But something that might have been more interesting, is Dick Monfort passing the torch?
You are Locked On Rockies, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rock on Rockies fans, welcome into the Locked On Rockies podcast for today, the 14th day of November in the year 2025. I'm your host of the Locked On Rockies podcast, Paul Holden, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. And thanks to your help, we've become the #1 sports podcast network. So thank you so much for tuning in and enjoying all the great Locked On Podcast Network content, including us here on the Locked On Podcast, or the Locked On Rockies podcast. And I am Paul Holden, your Rockies fan extraordinaire. Been bringing you all sorts of Rockies talk for a few seasons now. I think we're getting close to 5 seasons now, and been following this team. Been a Rockies fan, ride or die, my entire life. Today on the show, we're going to talk about Paul DePodesta's first press conference in Colorado, and more so focus on a little bit of there was definitely. I thought it was very interesting about Dick Monfort at this press conference, and I'm not alone in this here as well. So we're going to dive into that. Maybe if we have time, we're going to talk about the MVP reaction here for the first time in a long time, maybe first time ever. There's been repeat MVPs in both leagues. Personally, if we don't get to it, I thought Cal Raleigh should have won the AL MVP. I thought the value of that providing a catcher is a little bit different. I think that adds some extra stuff, but numbers don't lie. And of course, freaking Shohei, man, and the Dodgers, things just keep rolling on the gravy train for the old Los Angeles Dodgers. But before we go any further, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. So, Rockies get their first press conference from Paul DePodesta in Denver on Thursday here. And it was, I think this is one where I don't think there was only one thing that was said wrong, because I think the right things were said here. He said that Matt Holliday didn't touch home plate. And we know that's a lie, because he was called safe, and the game ended there with Matt Holliday being safe at home plate. That's how the game ended. You can say he didn't touch home plate. Well, it doesn't matter. He was called safe, and Matt Holliday touched home plate, and the Rockies won that game. So, yeah, hey, kudos to have the Stones still as well, because he was in the opposite. He was on the other side. He was on the Padres during that season. So, to sit there and be, I liked that. That was a good. When we're talking about like personality moments there, that was a pretty good one. And overall, from the press conference, from his comments, nothing stood out to me as necessarily game-breaking or something we haven't really heard him talk about before. I think it was interesting during the press conference how there was a conversation about taking swings, being open for that, and paired with the being asked about Deshaun Watson and the Deshaun Watson deal. So I think it was encouraging to hear that he wants to take some swings. That has to happen at some points. Eventually, we as Rockies fans can't sit here and allow the Chris Bryant contract to burn us from the Rockies being able to go out and make a splash when the time is right. Not necessarily thinking the time is right now to bring someone in on something crazy and overpay for something with the state of the team. But if ideally, if things are working out, this is a long-term relationship here. This is a long-term partnership that can eventually lead to the point that the Rockies are going to be in a position where they need to take the swings. They need to take the risks. They need to make the move. And I was encouraged to hear that there might not be hesitation. And there was some confirmation of from Paul there saying that he feels like he is going to be given the autonomy. He feels like he is going to be given what he needs in order to execute his vision. And I think that's kind of the big main takeaway here, because it's Dick Monfort himself in this press conference, as Walker Dick Monfort didn't say a lot in this press conference. Didn't have a ton to say, and passed the buck off to not only DePodesta but his son as well to be talking about and answering, and really some of the questions when the media were asking questions that were directed to the both of them. It certainly seemed like Walker was answering more and being the one more kind of at the forefront, and the one being the one answering the questions more than Dick Monfort. Dick Monfort actually, there is a moment here in this press conference where he says like, "Oh, they feels like they're kind of pushing me out," in a joking tone. But I think even to just acknowledge that. And there's, I believe Troy Rennick has a column in the Denver Post, also talking basically with the headline saying the torch has been passed, and it certainly seemed like that might have been the case. I guess I'll believe it when I see it, type of thing. But it was pretty interesting in that press conference to see how much Dick Monfort took a back seat. How much Dick Monfort wanted Walker to be the one answering the questions. And I'm not saying that as like he's hiding from it. I think that might actually be the thing. Maybe he is. Maybe we were hoping for more something big and boisterous and to hear from it. But this could be a quiet fading into the background here. This could be the moment where he is legitimately passing the torch on, and Walker really is going to be taking the reins as Dick takes a step back. It was, Dick also mentioning in that in during his time speaking, though, talking about how much he does care, acknowledging the criticism of him. And hey, this show has been no stranger to lobbing that criticism against him, but he emphasized that he cares. He emphasizes that he wants to fix things, and that he cares about bringing winning baseball here. And I think this might be the sign, one of the signs. And again, what Walker Monfort ends up being, what Walker Monfort ends up executing and doing, and what that leads for the Rockies, obviously time will tell. But I do think that this going away from this press conference, I do think actually, even me, a big critic here, was saying maybe he is actually stepping back a little bit. Maybe he is actually releasing and relinquishing a little bit of this control. I'm certain there's still going to be limits. I'm certain there's, and as I mentioned, he was certainly very involved in the hiring process and everything like that. But I did think it was very interesting to see that even just in that press conference alone, he took the step back. And that I mean, again, it could be nothing. I could be overhyping something, but I know I'm not alone in looking at that. I know I'm not alone in pointing that out. I thought it was going to be interesting here. I just thought that was one of those like main takeaways here. But just a couple of other quotes here from DePodesta from earlier on. I'm reading these from 9 News. There's a thirst to build here from Paul DePodesta. The first thing I want to do is really get to know everybody here that's already here and understand the capabilities that are already in place, DePodesta said. I want to do that before I start thinking about how exactly we might want to supplement that with additional people or additional skills. I've been given assurances that there's not just an appetite, there's a thirst to build the front office out and make it a real strength for the organization. And again, as good as that sounds, as much as I was talking about there might be positive things. At this stage, that is something that has to be proven here. And then it doesn't have to, and it's not just proving it from the ownership and from the Monfort level. This is DePodesta has to prove it as well. He has to prove that he can execute the vision, prove that he can execute managing Coors Field. And the one thing that is good about him coming into this, at least his experience with the Dodgers and the Padres, it's not like he's coming in completely foreign and not like he hasn't seen baseball or watched or digested what it takes to go out here and play at altitude. again, these are just one of those things we can't necessarily hang our hat on until we see it and see how it all plans out. But again, I think taking the time, making sure that you do the evaluation of what you have before you try to go too aggressive or really try to reinvent the wheel in all the aspects before you know what you have. I like the hesitation. I like not the hesitation. I like being thorough there and making sure you understand where you're at and what you have there. Here's what Walker Monfort has to say about the allocating of the team spending. Where do we need to add? What can be done different with those dollars to provide long-term a greater return on investment, Monfort said. So we're going to be supportive of that. We look forward to having his thoughts on what needs to be done. And again, I think there's going to be plenty of flexibility. That I get. That's really the big guess right there is what does that flexibility look like? What does the support of DePodesta look like here going forward? I think that's going to continue to be the $1 million question and going to be the thing that really sticks out and really defines what he is able to do and if he is able to execute his vision as well. All right, let's keep more reactions. Let's keep breaking this all down. I know it's the biggest story and the biggest stuff going on in Rockies land, so let's keep talking about it. All coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Before we do that, though, got to tell you about the folks that help make this show possible, and that includes FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push and when you got someone like Nikola Jokic on the floor. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Yes, $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins at FanDuel. Head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. We are also brought to you by Doer, and I'm rocking my Doer flannel right now. It's super comfortable. It's super high quality, too. I was wearing it when I was riding my bike into work today here. It kept me warm, kept me comfortable, and the best part, it also kept me not too warm because they got the Cool Max technology. Doer jeans, and it's not, hey, I'm talking about shirts. Doer jeans, they're the real star of the show. They got 5 times the stretch of traditional denim. They're antibacterial, meaning your jeans stay fresh longer so you can wear more and wash less. And they're made with Cool Max that regulates your body temperature and wicks moisture, keeps you cool and comfortable as the temperature changes. Doer combines classic jeanswear style with the kind of comfort and performance you get from the athletic wear, the best of both worlds. It's designed to look great and stay comfortable all day, no matter what you're doing. And I've been rocking this all day, and I've been comfortable all day. Doer are pioneers of blending technical innovation with everyday clothing. They invented the original performance denim. Simply put, Doer makes the world's most comfortable pants without having to sacrifice style. And you can check out Doer right here in Denver at 2621 Laramie Street. Pick up a pair for yourself or as an amazing holiday gift. Mention my promo code LOCKEDONDENVER in store to get 15% off your first order, or check them out online at shopduer.com/LockedOnDenver for 15% off. That's shopduer.com/LockedOnDenver. Locked On Rockies here, back with you for segment number 2 of today's episode of the Locked On Rockies podcast, reacting to Paul DePodesta's first press conference in Denver. And hey, again, I think the momentum and the hype and the energy building a little bit here, but I do have to approach everything with that cautious optimism. I still sit here and I still feel a little bit hesitant, as much as I don't want to just I don't want to just embrace the hopium. I don't want to just buy completely into the fact that it's something new, something shiny, and that it'll all wash it away. But I think so far throughout the very short timeline since this news has dropped, I do think some confidence is built a little bit more. So I think that there is something that the the right things are being said. It doesn't necessarily mean everything is going to, turn around. But I do think a little bit. I do think a little bit of this press conference gave us at least a signal or a sign that things can be different, might be different, potentially will be different. It has to actually be executed. They have to actually follow up on everything, and they have to actually build something. As it's easy to get excited and get pumped up and get encouraged by a press conference on the 14th or the 13th of November. But it's going to be another thing when it's June of next year. What do the Rockies look like at that point? What are you going to be able to do in your short off-season window to be able to start setting this? Because again, the Rockies cannot step backwards anymore. There is no more stepping backwards. This is just about as bad as it gets. It narrowly avoided being as bad as it gets. So I have to pump. As much as I'm encouraged. Hey, taking swings. Hey, we're gonna be trades or something. We're gonna be looking at. Hey, it looks like Dick Monfort really is stepping away. Walker Monfort really taking on and embracing a lot of roles. Really taking things head on. Really getting engaged here and trying to work with DePodesta here to start building this vision. But it's also the Rockies we're talking about here, right? There is a lot of history that has to change and has to be overwritten here. There's a lot that has to be done to change the reputation of the Colorado Rockies around the league. There's a lot that has to be done in order to get the Rockies organization on the same page from top down. And there's a lot of work to be done on discovering and figuring out how the Rockies can be a consistently competitive team in a National League West that is really wild. The Padres now facing a sale, the Giants doing a bunch of overhaul, the Diamondbacks kind of sitting a little bit more quietly, but loaded with young talent and been able to develop players at a great rate over the past couple of years. And then, of course, sitting at the top of it all is the Dodgers. So not only is it the unique challenge of figuring out the Rockies, it's figuring out how to compete in a hyper competitive division when you're at a severe disadvantage in some ways. This isn't just going to fall on Paul DePodesta. The Monforts, this does have this press conference, this hiring, the promotion of Walker. All of this has to actually lead into change. And that change needs to be executed. And it needs to be believed in. And it needs to be given the support. No more meddling, no more, overthinking things. Let this guy do his job. And at this point, you have to be willing to embrace what it is he's going to do. Because you cannot keep on this path. You have been on this path. You've enabled this. You've walked down this path for far too long, leading to rock bottom. The climb back up is a long one. Will they give the resources? Will they give the support to help make that climb? I think the jury's still out on that. That's not something we're going to know right now. That's not something we're going to figure out here right away. And then on the flip side, is DePodesta going to be able to execute and use those resources. We'll see. But I still think my biggest takeaway, I mean, is that joke that Dick said, getting a little bit real about saying that he cares, saying and saying that he sees the criticisms and stuff like that. I think that was one of the bigger things to latch on to here. Because now press conference, at this point for me, press conference time is over. We got the introductory stuff. The introductory welcome period is over. The work is now. And there's a lot of decisions and a lot of things that got to get done. And they got to start happening right away. Let me know what your reactions were to the press conference. Let me know what your reactions have been to DePodesta's comments throughout the week here. And all things Rockies in the Locked On Rockies YouTube comment section right here on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel. All right, folks, let's finish out the show. The conversation about the MVP voting right here on Locked On Rockies. Locked On Rockies back with you here for segment number 3 of today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Thank you so much again for making it your first listen of the day and for making the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network. Appreciate that. Appreciate you. Appreciate all your thoughts as well in the Locked On Rockies YouTube comment section. So before we wrap things up for the week, before we put a bow on everything here, the MVPs were announced. Cal Raleigh not winning the MVP, Aaron Judge and Shohei Ohtani taking it. No real argument against Shohei Ohtani, is there's a guy that continues to be one of the best batters in baseball and pitching. I know the pitching maybe not as much, he still pitched this year. He was still good at pitching. And I know it doesn't count, but the dude struck out 10 and had 3 home runs in a playoff game. I mean, there is no player in baseball more valuable than Shohei Ohtani when he's literally excelling he's better than every Rockies player as a pitcher and a hitter. Yeah, I mean, that's just plain and simple. On the other side, and if you listen to me, I'm a big offensive guy. Big offense, big impact. I don't think, and the WAR and the numbers are different. There's plenty of other things. I personally think that Cal Raleigh should have won the AL MVP. Catcher is a difficult position. He played a ton. He was very much flirting with Judge's AL record. Did it from both sides of the dish. The batting average, of course, is a problem, but there were certainly other categories that Kyle Raleigh led that I personally think I think the catcher factor should have added a 0.5 to everything, multiplier to everything. And again, hey, that's not how the numbers actually work. They literally factor in things. They factor in positions. They do all this stuff. I get you. The Mariners are not what they are without Cal Raleigh. And of course you could say that about the Yankees without Judge. But I guess in just more exposure to it, where I'm at, I really just do think the catcher element is a game changer for me. Catcher is such a different position. It's such a difficult position. It's such a grueling position. And to be that productive when you're at a position that historically there have been great sluggers, there have been great hitting catchers, there have been plenty of great offensive performances from catchers. But one of the greatest, if not an argument for the greatest catcher season of all time, isn't good enough to keep up with Aaron Judge, who was literally an absolute offensive juggernaut and continues to be one of the greatest hitters we've ever seen and is certainly proving to be a worthy face of baseball and a worthy MVP. Again, the numbers don't lie. The stats showed, and the numbers said that Aaron Judge, WAR, and in other categories was better. That's not. I guess I'm not mad. I don't think it was a quote unquote bad choice. There wasn't a bad decision between the two of them. I'm just saying, if I had the final say, I would have weighed in the catcher stuff a lot more. I just think it's so difficult. Mixed with the Mariners pitching staff being successful. I mean, again, the pitchers are doing that, but it's also Cal Raleigh being a factor in that. Being a factor in what makes a team great, a great pitching staff is a great catcher. And I just think Cal Raleigh's season was special enough to get him the MVP, but that's not what the voters thought. Folks, that is going to do it for today. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Rockies podcast. Make sure you're checking out the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel and being part of the show. We'll be back in action next week with more Rockies talk, free and streaming on your favorite streaming services and on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel. You can help the show in the offseason by firing off your Rockies hot takes and questions in the Locked On Rockies YouTube comments section. And make sure that you're staying up to date with all things baseball with Locked On MLB and Locked On MLB Game Night. And, of course, if you need more Colorado sports coverage, Locked On Broncos, Avalanche, Nuggets, Buffs, all free and streaming on your favorite streaming services and on YouTube. Folks, thank you so much again for making us your first listen of the day. Thank you for hanging out with us here all week long on the Locked On Rockies podcast. I'm Paul Holden saying so long from the Locked On Rockies podcast.